Diana Russini writes, talking about the 10-1 start last year for the Birds. Those 10 wins were a grind. The Eagles were winning, but things weren't exactly perfect behind the scenes and from a culture standpoint. One issue, Nick Sirianni is a conservative play caller, and that never goes over great with a franchise quarterback. Brian Johnson, the last year's offense coordinator, had a great relationship with Hurts, which is part of the reason why he was promoted before the season. But according to a few people in Philadelphia, while Johnson was the OC, it was 100% Sirianni's offense you were watching last season. And Sirianni wanted to do it his way. That meant a conservative run-first approach, especially when they got into the red zone. And I thought this was just completely fascinating, right? She goes, in the end, I believe they kept Sirianni for 2024 because they felt that Nick could still do this. Roseman believes this is a championship roster. What that means, if Sirianni doesn't take them to the next level in 2024, the leash isn't that long. So she basically details the relationship between Nick and Jalen, which has been in the consciousness, right? Like, oh, we're kind of spring. We've kind of talked about this, and Hurts saying that 90% of the offense is new, and all this other stuff about the way the offense is kind of he's looking at it, and Nick's like, well, that's not really it. So I think it's going to be interesting about those two and whether or not those two can get on the same page. I mean, obviously, Kellen Moore has his spin, and it's going to be a big deal with him as the OC. But it's going to be really about Sirianni overseeing it, Kellen Moore as the kind of who's going to drive the ship, and Jalen who's going to execute it all. Those three have to become as one. I mean, clearly that was not the issue. So Diana Russini writes, a conservative run-first approach when they got into the red zone, and last year opposing defenses were ready for it. Johnson wasn't calling plays. He was solely focused on giving Sirianni the offense that Sirianni wanted to run. And this is all just completely fascinating as to, what is the offense, right? What's the Kellen Moore piece of it add? What are the new wrinkles? So last year, according to Diana Russini, we saw an offense that was run first and teams saw it coming. Well, we kind of knew that. The issue with the offense last year, I thought, in the run game, Jalen wasn't a part of it. I understand the natural inclination to protect your starting quarterback, especially in the run game. He's so effective in it. You don't have the same execution without him in it. You just are that much easier to defend. The other issue is, if we're to believe that Hurts wants to go down the field more, he also needs to have better mechanics. Like his mechanics suffered, particularly the second half of the year. Now, this whole thing is fascinating to me because we saw Hurts in the Super Bowl have one of the greatest games a quarterback can have. We've seen him at times look incredible as a thrower. He throws that are bucket throws, those drop in the bucket down the field. He seems to have a really good knack of throwing the ball down the field. And last year, it kind of went sideways on him. So I'm curious. To me, as we start camp, the whole question is going to be, what does this offense look like? How comfortable is Hurts in it? And can he get back to what he was 2 years ago? That, to me, is the biggest question that surrounds the Eagles right now in camp. Can they fix Hurts and the offense? No Jason Kelce, right? So the offensive line is still really good, but you got the veteran is not going to be a part of it, right? The mainstay who's been there for so long, who had so much trust, so much responsibility. He's not there. And that's going to be a big deal. You have a great running back in Saquon Barkley, who was multifaceted. We remember last year that they didn't throw the ball to DeAndre Swift enough out of the backfield. We all thought that that was going to be a part of it, and it wasn't. You got two dynamic receivers in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Your third receiver is Dallas Goedert. Your fourth receiver should be Saquon Barkley. I get the notion that, you need to upgrade slot a little bit. I get it. But they have plenty of weapons. It's going to be up to Nick and Kellen Moore to get this offense to where it needs to be. With those kinds of weapons, that offense can't struggle. I love what the Eagles did defensively in the back end. They addressed some needs. They're still going to be young, so there's still going to be some growing pains in the back end. We'll see if they can get enough pass rush, because that's another area where you go, But overall, I feel fine about the defense. You have a veteran coordinator. You have a defense that should be able to compete. I don't know. They're going to be back to 2 years ago when they were set the franchise record in sacks, but they should be better, especially in the back end with those young players who are all terrific. They're going to be, I think they're going to be much better in the back end. Ultimately, they're only going to win because of their offense. So that's where everything lies. I'm fascinated by it as we start training camp 2024. We'll get to the Phillies, which it's a shame, man. Alvarado Friday night, you lose Saturday. You come back yesterday. Tyler Phillips was terrific. You salvaged the win. You're in Minnesota. Ranger first started the second half. Curious to see how he looks. JT ready to come back. That's a good sign. Trade deadline looming. We'll talk about that as well. Good morning. JP Johnson, Bats Up, VG, Violations, Greg. What do you say, fellas?
How we doing?
27 blue. 27. Hey, y'all. Omaha. Let's go.
I'm excited too, guys.
I love it. I love it. I love it, man.
I know you do.
It's my favorite thing, man.
Ah, man, you look like you're all high on some recreational drugs, and you're not. It's just some caffeine and training camp on the horizon.
Yeah. And look, I get people go training camp, whoa, whatever. It's just a milepost.
Yeah.
When it comes that the season's around the corner.
It's like when like with baseball, right? When you start seeing the trucking loaded up for pitchers and catchers, this is the same thing. Getting excited for seeing grown ass men in the Andrew Frazier short shorts and the bubble helmets. Like, I'm excited for all of this.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Now, I thought VG, you read the Diana Russini piece first, and I think that's interesting because the whole. Let's face it, everything is all going to be about this offense.
Yes.
Like, if you have a chance, like, I had a debate Saturday. I do a weekly show for Fox, and I had a debate about the Cowboys. I work with a guy named Jason Fitz, used to be on ESPN. Mm-hmm. Jason we were debating pretty fiercely about Eagles versus Cowboys. And he's like, well, I don't see what the Eagles did beyond Barkley that says that they're going to overtake the Cowboys. And I'm going, I don't even see it. I look at the Cowboys. They go,
what have they done?
Right.
They're a little mess.
They had a worse. They're all season,
backwards.
Right? Like, you're signing. You might as well sign Emmitt Smith instead of Zeke Elliott. Right?
Right.
Like, come on. Your second receiver is Tolbert. Right? Like, what do we do? Brandon Cooks, but then Tolbert as your third receiver. I mean, Brandon Cooks is getting up there. I don't know.
Your best players need contracts. Like, that's a mess.
To both of them, CD and Dak. Like, so I don't know, but it's interesting, the opinion outside of Philadelphia. Now I'm going, well, maybe I'm too close to it.
Right.
I always try to look at it like, let me take myself out of and look at it from 50,000 feet. I don't know. I still think this Eagles team should win, but this offense is everything, right? Like, they're an offensive team. All their money's on that side of the ball. They have to be dominant, getting back to dominance offensively.
And that's the question, This it wouldn't be a training camp without drama. This team, I mean, I love my reality drama shows. By the way, Love is Blind. Not Love is Blind. Love Island finale was phenomenal last night. But we got drama rolling into this where it was like, oh, Brian Johnson was the issue. He's gone. And Diana Russini's like, not so fast. Maybe it wasn't all Brian Johnson last year. Maybe this was Nick's fingerprints all over this offense being horrible last year. So it wouldn't be an Eagles training camp without that kind of little drama. I love it.
And it already started. Listen, it already started, I mean, early in spring when, Hurts is given a chance to kind of endorse Sirianni. He doesn't really do it. I look at last year, and one of the big difference, I get Sirianni likes to run it. Mm-hmm. Like, he's a run-first, conservative play caller who likes to run, establish. Right.
Yeah, I'm usually good with that.
Yeah, I mean that's something that's something that we all would fight about. Like, well, you don't run it enough, you don't establish it. And 2 years ago, when they were going to the Super Bowl, as great as the receivers were, everything came off the run game.
Yes,
like you're able to go over the top and set everything up down the field for big strikes. But the run game never really got started last year. And I think the biggest part, beyond DeAndre Swift not being the primary back, like that number one back, it's taking Hurts out of it. When you take Hurts out of the run game, it's just not that effective.
I mean, think about it. They were so dominant on the run in 2022 that the back seven opposing defenses had to respect both the pass and the run for the Birds. And so that you have to still implement pieces of that. But I'm super intrigued by this article because, look, last year and 2022 were complete opposites, right? And the big thing is the culture. The culture in 2023 was obviously not there. And we saw it as we lost in Tampa Bay in the playoffs, how the culture really kind of imploded on us. And so going into this upcoming season, that's going to be one of the things that I'm really going to be looking forward to is how is this culture kind of reshaped itself?
And the culture is Nick's leadership. In the article, I mean, we all knew how he picked the offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, but I mean, Russini goes in to say that that's not really the norm in the league. And when you look around, head coaches usually have some flexibility about who their coordinators are.
Of course they do. So, like just to give you a little insight, because I know a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like, when they feel like they're hot, they have a good chance for a job. One of the things you have to do is when you go into an interview, you go in like, this is going to be my staff. Here's my OC. Here's my DC. This is my philosophies. Like when you go in for an interview, that's kind of where you're at. And then when a guy leaves, it's usually on you. I think after the fiasco would happen with Doug, when Doug lost his coordinators and didn't really have that Rolodex to come in with an answer, I think Howie's like, listen, I'm taking this over.
How does that play in the locker room with these men looking to you as the leader when you kind of been snipped of your power, and they all know Howie's walking around throwing his junk on the table? How does that play with the locker room?
From everyone I talk to, they like Sirianni. Like they like him. They appreciate it. They won a lot of games with him in a short period of time. So I don't know how
liking someone doesn't mean
but they want to
they're a good leader.
But they have had confidence in the fact that they won.
Skeeves here. Am I going to follow Skeeves in the battle? I don't know. Is he going to leave me in the battle?
Not with those socks.
Right. But I like them.
No, but I'm curious in the effect. I think, look, players ultimately, if you win, they'll believe in you and they'll follow you. You have to win. Now, they've won up until the last year's slide at the end of the year. Now, that's to me, can they rebuild this offense to be able to start that belief process again?
Well, you bring up the fact that are these players playing for him? And I can't help but think back to 2021 where, we were all making fun of the whole Roots, analogy that he was making. The whole media, all fan base was making fun of him. And they ripped off, 8 straight wins? And the whole locker room seemed to get behind him. And so, Nick Sirianni, we may not like his antics. We may not like what happened last year. But for some reason, this locker room, this team still fights for him.
You're living in the past, man. That's 3 years ago. That's eternity in the NFL. A lot has happened.
Including they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and an epic collapse.
Okay, right.
When
we're all the collapse. I get we're all the collapse. I understand the need for Sirianni to prove himself again.
Yes.
Like I think that's obvious. I think, listen, when you're 10-1 and then you have that kind of a dramatic slide, you got to prove to your locker room that you can lead them to win. I'm completely on board with that.
And
I don't think that's an issue. I just think they need to get a scheme. Like, everything's got to be on the same page. Like, they obviously weren't last year, according to Diana Russini and everybody else. Zach Berman will tell you that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so everybody talked about it. They're 10-1, but are they a paper tiger? It unraveled, though, in a more disturbing way. Like, suddenly it's like you're going to lose games. They suddenly couldn't move the ball. That was the distressing thing.
So let me ask you, they had Hurts not running the ball last year. Kellen Moore comes in here. Mm-hmm. Herbert's kind of been an underachiever. He underachieved under Kellen Moore
1 year.
Okay. But has Kellen Moore ever done an offense where the quarterback was involved in the running game? Like, has he had success doing this? Can he do it?
Dak wasn't that kind of quarterback.
Right.
So he wasn't that kind of quarterback.
Right.
And Herbert's not that kind of quarterback.
Right. So can he do that here?
But do we need him to do that, though?
Yes.
Do we need him to run more?
Yes.
I think you do.
Jalen Hurts?
Yes.
Yes.
Run more?
So,
I mean, I think, listen, I think he's effective in it.
Yes.
I think you have to be able to do that. I think if you look at the offense 2 years ago, now again, our defenses always adjust. We saw it here with Chip Kelly. Defenses are going to adjust. DCs got tape on you. The minute there's tape on you, you go, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to force Jalen to the weak side, right? And then I'm going to mush them, and I'm going to attack them that way, right? Like, that's kind of how it goes. Now you need another wrinkle, right? Like, it's always, tit for tat. And can you get that next wrinkle that will set you apart? That always keeps the defense chased. Like, great offenses, A, you need great players, and B, you need to always be evolving.
That's a good point.
I agree. Yeah, I don't know if Kellen doesn't have the track record of doing it.
Just because you don't have the quarterback to do that doesn't mean you can't do it. I mean,
sure.
Like any coordinator, like, it's all about style, right? Like, you build your offense around the personnel that you have. So
he's a smart guy too.
I mean, listen, it's not that complicated.
I just don't get the Kellen Moore love. I mean, 2 years ago he's like a Cowboy guy, a Charger guy. He's a guy. But now suddenly he's our guy, and it's like, oh, Kellen Moore.
Brian Johnson. That's all we're hopeful for.
You get that because this is what it. If you're an Eagles fan, it's we're about to start training camp. Of course, you're going to lean more to the optimistic. Everybody's optimistic beforehand. Here's what I like about Kellen Moore. He's done it. He's called plays. Mm-hmm. That's actually a big deal. That you have called plays. You feel comfortable in your shoes to call plays, and I think that's an upgrade. Now, was Brian Johnson trying to appease Nick by calling plays that would suit the offense that Nick saw in his head? Mm-hmm. I'm sure that was definitely a part of it. You're always trying to appease your boss, right? So I think that was definitely a part of it. But you still need to be able to figure out what to call in the right time. That's effective. And we saw them against Seattle, against the Giants. Like, all of a sudden, and it wasn't like that for the first, 10-1. Mm-hmm. They might not have been as great as we had hoped them to be, but we didn't see periods where that offense looked dysfunctional. And during that slide, the offense looked anemic. Yeah. And it was a complete 180.
I listen, I understand all that.
They still beat Miami. They beat Buffalo, Dallas. I mean, they had a string of wins that were impressive.
And until it all collapsed. But listen, Kellen Moore is an extremely smart man. I do like that he brings a different wrinkle to the offense as well. We talked about the motioning, how that's going to implement something different for this Eagles offense. But
that's kind of 101, though.
I'm just saying.
I mean, like, what motion? Motion's kind of 101.
Well, I mean, we really weren't doing that the past couple years.
I mean, look, the guy did it, right? So that's great that the guy did it. That's what makes me feel, okay, I feel like that's an improvement. But I mean, to VG's point, I hope you have a lot more in your arsenal other than you did it.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about the fact that you want this offense to look different, right? And I think that Kellen Moore can make this offense look different. And just because, listen, he's had quarterbacks like Dak Prescott. He's had quarterbacks like Justin Herbert. And we'll see how he does here with Jalen Hurts. But Honestly, guys, the offense isn't even my main concern. I'm more concerned about this defense, but I understand why people are concerned about this offense. I think they'll get back to 2022.
I'm completely on the side.
Yeah, I feel like defense is going to be the defense. This offense got to outscore people. Yeah. That's the way they're going to win. But you say Kellen Moore's smart. I don't know. To me, he's a guy. We're trying to get back to functional. We're trying to get a functional offense that runs some motion and recognizes a blitz. He's not a sharp guy. This is where we are with the offense right now. We used to want guys that were like gold standards, innovative, sharp, smart. Kellen Moore's not that to me. He's a guy. He was okay at the Cowboys. He's okay at the Chargers. I don't know. I'm so underwhelmed by Kellen Moore and the love that's out there for him. I don't understand it.
Who did you want for those?
Nobody worth anything is going to come in here with this situation. That was the problem.
Really?
I don't. Who's going to come in here and be
situation's that bad where you got a really good offensive line. You have two great weapons.
Yeah, what young and up and coming sharp guy's going to come here and be like Nick's lackey or whatever? I don't see it, man.
I don't think it's the lackey situation, but again, I get that Sirianni's an offensive coach. But I never got it like it's a lackey piece.
Kellen Moore's here again. I mean, he's not the cream of the crop, Kellen Moore. I mean,
I think he's a guy that's done it, right? So I'm
mediocrely.
I'm between. I don't know. Dallas had decent offenses. Like I'm kind of in between you two. JP, defense, no. Like we're all about defense. This offense, the only way that they're going to win anything is if this offense is clicking.
They were just gashed last year, especially in the losing streak.
All their money, all the resources are on offense. Your offense needs to dictate, right? And then if you're scoring, then you can unleash your pass rush. If you think that they're going to win on the backs of their defense, you better think again.
No.
They have no chance. They got to get this offense in order.
I'm just not as concerned with the offense that I am with the defense because of the way they were gashed last year. And you still have a lot of the pieces from the Super Bowl year are still back in 2024. The big question is the leadership on top. Nick Sirianni.
You better be way more concerned with the offense because that's where the offense, again, the offense needs to look dramatically different than it did during that slide. No, otherwise, it doesn't matter your defense. It's irrelevant because you're not going to win. You have to fix this offense. It's the number one thing this training camp. This offense has to work.
Hopefully these hard practices do something for them.
We all silly like the mayor.